Om Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Today we will see how we are going to transform the ego. Transforming the ego, that's the topic. Egoism is the greatest obstacle in spiritual life, as well as in our day-to-day social life. People with huge ego, they cannot make real friends. They cannot have happy, a peaceful family or loving relationship. Now, what is this ego or egoism? Ahankara, that's in Sanskrit. Shankaracharya in Vivekchudamani defines ahankara as atrabhimanad ahamityahangkriti. He is talking about the inner organs, andakarana, and then in that inner organ is called ahankara, ego, from its identification with this body as one's own self. Identify with the body as and think that it is a self, that is ahankara. Ego makes the soul identify itself with the body in the form of I. We all say in our day-to-day life experience, whenever we say I see, I speak, I hear, I walk, what are we referring to? We are referring to our body. Body, mind, senses, all that. We are not referring to the Atman. When I say I see, well, it's a function of the sense organs. I think, it's a function of the mind. I'm happy, it's a function of the mind again, feeling. And all that the ego appropriates. Let's see how we experience something in the external world. We see the light from that object falls on the eye, then the vibration, it goes to the brain center, then the brain center sends it to the mind. The vibration comes to the mind. The mind analyzes, is something new or have I experienced before? Checks the memory file in the chitta, finds, oh, this is a flower. I have seen this before. And then immediately the ego props up and say, I see the rose. The ego didn't see, it's the I, the EYE, that saw that. But ego comes and says, I see the rose. I see the music. It's the ears that hears the music. I'm very happy. It's the mind which is happy. But the ego appropriates everything, the function of the body, mind, senses, everything. It appropriates itself and say, I see this, I speak that, I hear, I am happy, then I am fat, I am thin, I am young, I am old, I am rich, I am poor. It's nothing. It appropriates the function of all the other faculties. Ego is actually a reflection of the Atman, the self, in the Buddhi or intellect. So it's only a reflection. It's not something real. But we take it for real because we identify itself as we think that it's the Atman. The Atman, so Patanjali defines ego as the identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. Identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. Who is the seer? The Atman, the self, the pure self in us is the seer. But the seer is identifying with the instruments of seeing. What are the instruments? The sense organs. That's the indriyas. Chitta, the mind stuff. Buddhi, the intellect. manas, the mind, they are all antakarana, inner organs, and the indriyas, the sense organs. These are the instruments. And through these, we experience the external world. And egoism is the identification of the self with these instruments. The self, the pure self, Atman, is unchangeable. But what is the ego saying? Ego is constantly changing. One moment it is happy, another moment it is sad. One moment I am cold, then I am hot. I am miserable, I am very happy. Because it keeps on constantly changing. But the I, the real I, the Atman, is unchangeable. It doesn't change at all. So all these attributes like happy and sad, fat and thin, young and old, rich and poor, they are all attributes of body, mind, and the sense organs, and we superimpose it on the self. And this feeling, I and mine, it's the root cause of all our sufferings. The scriptures tell us again and again that we are essentially divine. But because of our ignorance, Maya, we have forgotten our divine nature, our divine self. Sri Ramakrishna says, this Maya, that is to say the ego, is like a cloud. The sun cannot be seen on account of the thin patch of cloud. A thin patch of cloud comes and hides the sun. But we see the patch of cloud by the light of sun. Similarly, the ego comes and hides the self. And what is the ego? Just a reflection of the Atman. And because of the self, the Atman is shining behind, the ego is there. Sri Ramakrishna continues. The sun cannot be seen on account of a thin patch of cloud. When that disappears, one sees the sun. If, by the grace of the Guru, one's ego vanishes, then one sees God. The I that makes a person worldly, Sri Ramakrishna calls the wicked I, the unripe ego. That's what we usually call egotism. And the goal of all spiritual discipline is to transform this unripe ego to ripe ego. And the ripe ego is not just harmless, but it's a real positive help on the spiritual path. The newborn baby does not have any ego. It does not see any difference. It cannot distinguish between itself and other people. So it's all just one uniformity. But as the baby grows, it becomes aware of its separate existence. But still, it's not fully aware, so often it may refer to itself in third person. As all the people call the baby by its name, so that the baby also will refer to itself by that name. So and so wants, so and so hungry, so and so happy, so and so want play. Because the I hasn't come. But after some time, as it grows, then becomes the I. The I feeling comes. and as we grow, our body changes, the mind changes, the intellect changes, but there is one unchanging entity, which is the I. I said, I referred to myself as I when I was a child. I referred to myself as I as a young person. And even now, as an older person, I still refer to myself as I. Till the last breath, I'll be referring to myself as I. So the I never changes. So we cannot get rid of this ego. Ego is there as long as we live. So there is no question of eradicating the ego, eliminating the ego. Only we can say we refine it, we transform it. Swami Ramakrishnananda says, it is true that every soul, so long as it is in a body, has a little bit of ego. If there were no ego, there would be no soul. For take away the ego, what remains? Only God. If ego is removed, what remains? God or Atman, the self. There's nothing. So as long as the body is there, the ego will be there. So we cannot say we will get rid of the ego. No. Sri Ramakrishna says ego is completely got rid of or vanishes only in samadhi. Ordinary people like us, ego will be there. Only thing we can do is transform it, refine it. As Sri Ramakrishna says, change it from the unripe ego to the ripe ego. Vedanta describes or groups ego into three categories. Infantile, childish ego. That is tamasic. It's too weak to accept responsibilities, burden of life. So, always looking at the negative side, pessimistic. Oh, something bad may happen. Always afraid, defensive. You ask a person with such ego, why did you do that? Instead of giving the proper answer, immediately will become explanation, defending the position. We are not finding fault with the person, just asking why you did, just to know. No, but the person is so afraid. No, don't have the courage to take responsibility. Always defensive. And ready to put the blame on others instead of taking responsibility for one's mistake or failures. And there is no self-identity. Always swayed by the opinion of other people. And leaning on others, the sense of insecurity. There's no sense of security, always depending on others for help. These are all the infantile ego, childish ego, or we can say, in terms of the gunas, it is the tamasic, the bottom, most inferior one. Then there is the adolescent ego, rajasic ego, very aggressive, but unsteady. Optimistic, oh, everything is fine. You look at the, I always say, the P-platers, drivers. You ask them, be careful when you drive. Oh, nothing will happen to me. Always optimistic. Nothing will happen to me. I am the center of the universe. Everything should go around me. But they're very temperamental. And in short, they're immature, restless, intoxicated with ambition and desire. These are all the adolescent ego or rajasic ego. In ordinary term, when we say a person is egotistic, we refer to these two, the tamasic, the infantile, childish, or the rajasic, adolescent ego, or a combination of both. And these two egos, they are one of the main cause of all the strife and suffering that we see in the world, conflict in the social life. And such egoism clouds the thinking. So the decisions made by such people of such ego is often wrong. They cannot make the influence. decisions made under those influence often turn out to be wrong. And another thing is, other people tend to avoid such people. With such huge ego, bloated ego, we tend to, or others avoid them. Describing such people with these two type of ego, Sri Ramakrishna says, it is the ego that says, what? Don't they know me? I have so much money. Who is there wealthier than me, wealthier than I? And then he says, if a thief enters a person's house and steals 10 rupees from the person, first of all, we'll catch the thief, give him a good thrashing, and then hand him over to the police. Say, what? How dare he steal my 10 rupees? In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna describes in detail in chapter 16 such ego. He calls it the Asuri Sambat, demoniac nature. I am wealthy, I am so successful, I am powerful, I am happy, everything is for my enjoyment. Who is like me? And Shri Krishna says further, the such ego will say, I have acquired all this today, I have destroyed all these people, I'll destroy all the others now. Who is there like me? Who can, who is there equal to me? And when you describe such egotism, you wouldn't expect spiritually minded people have egotism. Yes, there is. That is very dangerous. The egotism of spiritually minded. Oh, I am so holy. These people are all worldly people. That's very, very dangerous and hard to get rid of. I heard one incident about one of our young sisters who newly joined. She was in the headquarters, and one day the parents came to see her from some other place, not in Calcutta. They were staying in a hotel and came to see her. And the General Secretary Maharaji was informed that they are coming. So after some time, Maharaji called this girl and asked, where are your parents? I was told they are coming. Oh, they are gone away. I sent them away. Why? They are worldly people. Maharaji scolded her left and right. What? How can you say that your parents are worldly people? Then she asked one of other Maharajis to find out where they are staying. Ring around and find out in which hotel they are staying, because they are staying near the railway station, some hotel. This has happened some more than 35 years ago. No, people were traveling more by train, not by plane at that time. Find out where they're staying, go, bring them here, apologize to them and bring them back to Mutt. The spiritual ego is very hard to get rid. Oh, I am so holy. These people are worldly people. No. It's all the play of adolescent ego or childish ego, the tamasic or rajasic ego. They are cut off from reality and obsessed with self-love, egocentric, selfish. Compared to all this, there is the mature ego, sattvic ego, which are purposeful, self-controlled, neither aggressive nor defensive, but realistic, not optimistic and pessimistic, moderate in everything, and ready to standing on the feet, ready to face any difficulty when it comes. Take responsibility for the action instead of trying to put the blame on others and trying to find scapegoats. So Swami Vivekananda says, blame none for your faults. Stand upon your feet. Take the whole responsibility upon yourselves. Know that you are the creator of your own destiny. Such people are ready to make adjustments when needed, and they have got a sense of duty. So they are ready to put in effort. Doesn't matter however difficult or however troublesome the matter may be, it is to be done, they are ready to do it. So Vedanta asks us to make our ego strong and mature. so that we will be able to face the stress and strain of life without breaking under them. Only when the ego is strong and mature will the idea or the question of refining it or overcoming it come. There's no question of overcoming this the immature ego. It has to mature, and then you try to refine it, to transform it. Just because a person is physically grown up, is adult, does not mean that the person will have a mature ego. Majority of adults in the world are with childish or adolescent ego. And that's why we have got all these problems. Look at all the world leaders. They behave, they have got childish ego. Some of them have got adolescent ego, though. So go on creating problems. Ego can be made mature only by mature living, by learning from the mistakes that we make and improving every time from those particular the lessons that we learn. One Swami Vivekananda once said that he is thankful for all the mistakes that he made, because it is those, as well as the good deeds, because he is the sum total of both the good deeds and the mistakes that he made. Without those mistakes, he would not be what he was. That's what he's saying. So we learn from the mistakes. We make mistakes and learn from the mistakes and improve. And that's how the character is developed. Those who always try to avoid difficulties and sufferings will never attain maturity. They will remain child only. So we can say we should develop a certain degree, a high degree of stress tolerance. Should be able to face difficulties, face stress. Why is it that in modern time there's a lot of an increase of mental illness among young people? Because they are trying, because of the tendency to seek only comfort and avoid difficulties, hardship, and also avoiding discipline. See, we hear in the schools, we cannot even raise the voice to the child, the teachers. Teachers are not, don't have any control over the students because they will get stressed. Children get stressed, students get stressed. So don't say anything. So what as a society, are we really helping the next generation? We are not. We have to face the hardship physically, mentally, to a certain extent, not breaking, but to a certain extent. So then we develop a tolerance to that. We exercise our body to strengthen the muscle, but we don't exercise the mind. These difficult facing problems and difficulties is an exercise for the mind to make it strong. Another means of maturing the ego is to develop sense of responsibility. The child knows that it's a responsibility of the adults to look after it. Child doesn't have to look after itself. Sri Ramakrishna says, if a child is invited to a feast, the child doesn't have to think where it is going to sit, what it is going to eat. The older people who are there will take care of it. But if an adult keeps up that attitude and put all the blame on others for one's failure, then that is the sign of immaturity. The sense of responsibility comes from the awareness that the world does not owe anything to us. Instead, or rather, we owe everything to the world. And so we should have the moral courage to take responsibility for our decisions. Decisions and actions. We see often the politicians says, the buck stops with me. Take the responsibility. Have the courage to take responsibility instead of putting blame. Here, often we hear some mistake happened, disaster happened. Oh, it is because of that person, because they didn't do this. Always putting the blame on somebody else. Have the courage to take responsibility. Accept it's my fault. I'll try next time better. Or we will try make the necessary corrections, improvements. When things go nice, go well, we are very happy to take up the credit. Everything going smooth. Oh, it's so because I did all these things, we did everything wonderful. But the moment the actions or the results are bad, it's somebody else's fault or it's God's fault. Sri Ramakrishna gives a very funny story to illustrate this. A person is very interested in gardening and planted many fruit trees, flowers, plants, and the garden was thriving. And people came and appreciated, and he will say, oh, I did this one, I did that one, I planted all this. Then one day, a stray cow came in and ate up many of the plants. When the man saw that, he got so angry that he bet the cow, and unfortunately the cow died. Now, according to Hindu tradition, killing a cow is a very great sin. Now, the sin of killing this cow came upon this man. But the man has studied the scriptures. So he was very good in arguing. He said, no, I didn't do. The hand did. And each organ has got its own presiding deity. The presiding deity of the hand is Indra. So it's not my responsibility. The blame is Indra's. So the sin went to Indra. Indra heard all the details. He said, all right, wait, I'll come. And Indra came to the man's garden, disguised as an old person. Oh, what a wonderful flowers. This tree is full of fruits. Who did that? Who planted it? Oh, the man was so happy. I did this one. See, this one I planted this, only recently, this one a few years ago. And he was showing around. I did. And suddenly dead cow. Dead cow. Who killed the cow? All this time he was saying, I did. So he couldn't say Indra did. Suddenly for the cow, he kept quiet. Then Indra said, oh, all the while you did. And then when it comes to the killing the cow, I did. You didn't do. Indra did. Hypocrite. So that's what we do usually. All the good things, good results, we can take the credit. When something goes bad, it is so-and-so's fault. I don't have anything to do with that. That won't do. If we don't take the responsibility, if you don't claim the ownership or doership, that I did, but if you have the idea that everything is done by the will of God, then good or bad results won't affect. But if we say that, if you take the ownership, doership, saying I did, then you have to take the responsibility of the good or bad results also. It's no halfway. You cannot say, all for the good things I take the credit, and the bad things all go to others or God. That won't do. There's no halfway. Either one or the other. Mature living also calls for dispassion. To remain unattached or neutral, rather than being swayed from one extreme to other by attachment or repulsion. We are attached to some things we like so much to invest our energy, time, money, everything into that. Some things we don't like, we completely avoid. No, you have to have a certain degree of dispassion. Don't go to extremes. follow the middle path. Moderation. Moderation in everything. And mature living also calls for living in the real world, in reality, not in the fancy dream world of your ego. The ego may create so many fantasies. Living there in that fantastic or the world of fantasy is not helping to mature your ego. Service is another means of wiping out egotism. Service to others. When you serve others, say, you have to put your self-interest on the back seat. You have to say you are serving a person. You have to look at that person's wishes, not push your ideas. So in that way, when you serve other people, your ego reduces a little to a certain extent. And attitude of servant or to God or a holy person creates humility also. Sri Ramakrishna calls that the ripe ego. So we can see that a mature, enlightened ego can have elevating, strengthening influence on the society, whereas the childish, adolescent egos, they are causing all the troubles, strives, problems in the world. Egotism is a great barrier for the flow of divine grace. Sri Ramakrishna says, if one fiber sticks out in the thread won't go through the eye of the needle. This egotism is like that fiber sticking out. So it obstructs the flow of the divine grace. And again, Sri Ramakrishna says, water does not collect on the high ground. It flows down. So when there is too much of ego, even if we receive God's grace, divine grace, we won't be able to retain it. Jesus says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Often people think that the meek cannot achieve anything. They think to be happy, to be successful, one have to be assertive, aggressive. That's what the modern society thinks. And modern society judges one's worth by how much the person has, not by what the person is. So what do we people do? But we all try to accumulate more and more. The competition goes on. And possess more to prove our worth, how much we are, how important we are, how wealthy we are. But what are we? What is the real character? Nobody bothers. So that creates more and more problems in the society. But meekness is not really weakness. Meekness is not cowardice. It is real strength. Lao Tzu, the Chinese sage, says, that which is soft conquers the hard. He gives the example of water. Water is so soft, but it can break through hard rocks. That which is soft conquers the hard. Rigidity and harshness are companions of death. Softness and tenderness are companions of life. Look at the dead body. After a few hours, the dead body becomes so rigid, stiff, hard. Whereas living body is always supple. Softness and tenderness are companions of life. So don't think that bending the head, being meek is weakness. Vedanta suggests different methods to transform the ego depending upon the individual's nature and temperament. One method is to expand the ego. Most people are circumscribed by the individuality. They are incapable of extending beyond a narrow circle. My family, if I got a family, sometimes it should, even if I got a family, it will be only I. That's extremely selfish people. There are people like that, don't even care for the family. Then there are people who have got increased, they expanded the ego, that they consider the whole family. But often we see that when the ego is expanded to identify with the family, it is at the cost of having indifference or inimical attitude towards other families. The same with the societies. My society, my community, my nation. But it's all against my community, the other community is opposing them. Or being indifferent, at least better than being against them, having an angry, opposing attitude towards them. But that's how most of us behave. Even religion, my religion. To love my religion, to be involved in my religion, I have to hate other religions. So we see that boundaries of ego expands, but boundaries remain there. That boundaries can be removed only through right thinking, understanding, and discernment. We can detach ours from the body and the feeling of I and mine. And thus, we can feel for the whole world. There are perfected souls who could feel for the whole world. They have expanded their ego to such extent to include the whole world in that. So they feel the happiness and sorrow, suffering of everybody. To give one example, Swami Vivekananda was in Belur Math. One night, suddenly the room next to his was being occupied by Swami Vijnanananda, another brother disciple. Now Swami Vijnanananda saw that Swamiji was walking restlessly on the veranda in front of his room. So Swami Vijnanananda asked Swamiji, what's the matter? Are you not feeling well? Why are you not sleeping? Then he said, I was having good sleep. Suddenly I woke up with a jolt. It seems that somewhere people are suffering. Somewhere in the world, people are suffering. And Swami Vijnananda thought, what? Somewhere people are suffering. How can you know? There are so many people are suffering. Something has happened. Somewhere people go through difficult hardship. And then in the next day in the newspaper, they saw at that time, the exact time, there was a volcanic eruption in a small island near Fiji, and a lot of people have died. So that Swamiji's ego had expanded to such an extent that it covered the whole world and experienced the suffering and misery of people some faraway place. So when we expand the ego, we are not losing the ego. We are gaining infinite dimension. The raindrop falling in the ocean, it thinks it is losing its tiny individuality, but it's gaining the individuality of the ocean. It's becoming one with that vast ocean. That is why Sri Krishna says, Vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabhaha. Such a person realizes that all this is Vasudeva, the one innermost self of all. And then he adds, such great souls are rare. To expand the individual and the ego to such an extent, to find the underlying unity of all creatures is not possible for everybody. So the people who experience that is rare. But we all can expand our ego to a certain extent. And if we, these great souls who can expand the ego to such extent, they can envelop other egos and to in their own and envelop other egos with their ego and confer on those other egos the fulfillment and satisfaction their ego is experiencing. Say, to give an example for that, once Sri Ramakrishna had gone to Calcutta to see a doctor. He was accompanied by Golapma and two young disciples, Kali and Latu. It was late in the afternoon when they're coming back. Everybody was hungry, coming by boat. Sri Ramakrishna said, I am hungry. Have you got any money to buy some food? Then Golapma had few coins. So they stopped the boat on one place, and one of the young disciples went up into the shop and bought some snacks. Sri Ramakrishna took the packet, ate the snacks, didn't share at all. Didn't even look at the other people. There are three others there. They are also hungry. He ate all that and then drank some water from the Ganga, bent down, took the water from the Ganga and drank. Then said, oh, I'm happy now, full, satisfied. But strange, all these three people who are feeling hungry, they also felt full. They found that their hunger is gone. They didn't say anything, but later after coming to Dakshineshwar, they talked among the three and found out all the three of them had the same experience, that their hunger was fulfilled. We see similar story we hear in the life of in the Mahabharata. The Pandavas were in the forest, spending 12 years, but Yudhishthira wanted to have sages always with him and entertain them. So he prayed to the Lord, and Sun God, the sun, gave a vessel which will give food for the day as long as Draupadi the queen takes her meal. Once she finishes her meal, no more food will come out of that vessel. Now Duryodhana came to know about it, and once when sage Durvasa visited him, Duryodhana told sage, you please visit my cousins who are in the forest. They'll be very happy to have your blessings. Go this time, making sure that by the time they reach, Draupadi's meal will be over. His idea was sage Durvasa, who was well known for his short temper, will curse them. But Draupadi, they came as Duryodhana asked him. The sage in his innocence didn't see through Duryodhana's intention. So he came thinking how he was going to bless Yudhishthira and the Pandavas. And he said, I will have a meal. So the Yudhishthira said, please finish your bath and come, your meal will be ready. Draupadi is in a fix now. Where is she going to get food? She has finished her meal. No more food will come from the vessel. Her only help is Sri Krishna. So she prayed to Krishna, please save us from the situation. And within a short time, Krishna came. And the first thing he said, I'm hungry. Now already there's no food here, and we are saying again hungry, another person. Where am I getting food from? She said, no, I have finished my meal. I have washed the vessel, there's nothing. She said, bring the vessel, let me see. She brought the vessel, and he found some small speck of grain of rice and something sticking to the vessel. And we always joke, well, after all, Draupadi was a princess. She didn't know how to wash the vessel properly. That's why we joke when we tell the story. So Krishna took that small bit of grain of rice and ate. And then he said, oh, I am satisfied. The moment he said satisfied, the Durvasa and the 10,000 disciples, they say, They all felt full. They thought, how are we going to say, going to go there and say, we can't eat anything, we are full? So they went away without coming and meeting the Yudhishthira. The idea is, when they expand the ego, their fulfillment, the fulfillment that their ego enjoys, they can transfer to on other egos also. But when we read this story, we think, oh, that's all cock and bull story, not true. But it happened in Sri Ramakrishna's life. So we cannot say, no, it doesn't happen, it happens. And it is this expansion of ego that Sri Ramakrishna refers to when he says, all trouble cease when the ego dies. Another method to transform ego is to shrink the ego. The feeling that I am not the doer or the master. I'm just an instrument in the hands of God. I'm a child of God. By myself, I'm completely helpless. But with the strength of God, I'll be strong. I'll be able to face any problems or difficulties, any challenges. And Sri Ramakrishna refers to this ego as the ripe ego. The servant I, the devotee I, the child I, it does not injure, but helps one realize God. And we have got this typical example, Naga Mahasaya, Durgacharan Naga, disciple of, household disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. Girish Chandra Ghosh, the dramatist, he with his characteristic humor, he says, the Divine Mother Maya threw her net to catch the beings. So all the beings, humans, other beings, everybody was caught in her net, except two. One, Swami Vivekananda, and other, Naga Mahasaya. Swami Vivekananda's ego became so huge, covering the whole universe, that Maya could not contain his ego within the net. So he was not caught in the net. He could not be contained in the net. And Naga Mahasaya his ego became so small that it slipped through the meshes of the net. So these are the two things we have to do. Either expand the ego to such an extent, covering the whole universe, that we won't be caught in the net, or shrink the ego to such an extent that we slip through the meshes of the net. It doesn't happen to all of us. We are all caught in the net. And what are we doing? We, just like the fish that Sri Ramakrishna gives in the story, we catching the net in our mouth, we are going deep down and burying ourselves in the mud, think that we are safe, nothing will happen to us. He says, when the fisherman casts the net, some fish are never caught. They are so smart, they are never caught. They are the ever perfect. Some majority of the fish are caught, but some escape. They are the liberated. Many struggle, but are not able to escape. They are the striving ones. And there are lots, with the net, they go down in and bury themselves in the mud, think that we are safe. Nothing is going to happen to us. And they are the worldly minded. Think that they don't realize that the fisherman will pull up the net and they will be killed soon. So these worldly minded, they think that we are fine. They don't realize death is going to snatch them soon. So these are the two methods to escape the net of Maya or refine our ego, either expand it or shrink it. Another way is to strengthen to refine or transform the ego, is to strengthen the power of discrimination and analyze the I. Reason out, who am I? I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the senses, I'm not the vital forces, then what am I? You reason it out, eliminate one after another, not this, not this, not this, not this. And you come to the realization that I am that infinite self, the pure spirit. So that's why we are asked to repeat always, Soham, I am that, I am that. It's the earlier two parts, the path of expanding the ego, shrinking the ego, is more for the people who follow the path of devotion. It is reasoning out, eliminating, not this, for the path, people who follow the path of knowledge. So constant alertness is needed. And continuous discernment help us to know that the soul is separate from the body-mind complex. So we are able to distinguish between good and bad, virtue and vice, pleasure and pain, and understand that they all belong to affect only the body, the mind, the sense organs, not the self. The self is completely detached from all that. And more one practice self-control, discrimination and brahmacharya, there's better chance of getting rid of the ego and getting real knowledge. And to the extent we get real knowledge, we become free from the bondage. Sri Ramakrishna says, a man can get rid of ego after attainment of knowledge. On attaining knowledge, he goes into samadhi and the ego disappears. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of your real nature, what we really are. Once you get that knowledge, the person goes into samadhi. But it is very difficult to obtain such knowledge. Imagining that I have obtained knowledge, I'm going to samadhi. We can imagine. This doesn't mean that you go into samadhi. It's all daydreaming. No better than daydreaming. Sri Ramakrishna continues. You may indulge in thousands of reasonings, but still the I comes back. The moment you think that I have attained samadhi, well, you haven't, because I is there. I haven't gone anywhere. I is there. So that's why he says, you may indulge in thousands of reasoning, but still the I comes back. To give an example, he says, you may cut the people tree to the root today, but you'll notice a sprout springing up in tomorrow. Therefore, so what's the solution then? He gives a solution also. Therefore, if the I must remain, let the rascal remain the servant I. As long as you live, you should say, O God, thou art the master and I am thy servant. The servant I, that's the feeling, I am the servant of God and the devotee of God, does not injure one. On the contrary, it helps one realize God. Now, if you keep the servant I, what about the anger, lust, hatred, and other passions, which are all products of ego? Sri Ramakrishna says, with the person who has got the servant I, may have the impressions, appearance of lust, anger, and other passions, other emotions, but they do not harm the person. And then he gives an example. The sword can cut a person and kill the person. But if it touches the philosopher's stone, it turns to gold, then it cannot harm anybody. You cut this use a sword, gold sword, it cannot kill the person, harm the person. It retains the shape of the sword, but it is useless. It does not do any harm. The servant I is like that. The I is there. The feeling of anger, emotion, lust, or desires, all this may appear, but it's only appearance. Another example he gives is in the coconut tree, the branches, when they dry, they fall off. So we don't see the branch, but it leaves a mark on the trunk. So we can see there was that branch before. Once the ego disappears, So servant eye comes. It's only a mark is left there of the emotions of anger, lust, and hatred, like that. So that's why they say the holy man's anger is like a line drawn in the water. A line drawn in the water, how long it remains? It appears and disappears immediately. Sorrow and suffering are bound to come to all. It is part and parcel of human life. In spiritual life, we are asked to convert suffering to spiritual strength. Use all the unpleasant experiences of life, misery, pain, humiliation, rejection. We get so many. All that convert as stepping stones to progress in spiritual life. Swami Vivekananda in the Inspired Talk says, until we give up the world manufactured by the ego, never can we enter the kingdom of heaven. None ever did, none ever will. The rascal ego must be obliterated. And how do we obliterate the ego? Through suffering, through pain, make it learn from that. So Swamiji says, bless men when they revile you. Think how much good they are doing you. If anyone is hurt, it's only themselves. They are actually doing a good turn to us because by crushing our ego. Go where people hate you. Let them thrash the ego out of you and you will be nearer to God. Thank you.
Please note, next Friday night we will not be having the discussion. I'll be away. Similarly, on Sunday, next Sunday, the topic for Gayatriprana's talk is Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We won't be having a Zoom available for that talk, so please come in person if you can. And just to highlight, mostly on the first Sunday of the month, there's also a Gita class conducted by Gayatriprana on Microsoft Teams. So you do all get a note about that right at the end of our weekly email circular. So that will be on next Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. You're always welcome to join that. Yoga classes are on every Thursday from 10 to 11:15 a.m. A donation plate, donation box up the back. So, oh yes, and there's a special series of talks coming up on the Kena Upanishad, and that again is being conducted by Sri Ramakrishna. It'll be starting from Sunday the 20th of August, and it will go through monthly, one talk each month, right up to November. And we'll keep reminding you about that through our weekly email circular. Now we'll conclude with listening to a guided meditation by revered Pravrajika Gayatriprana Mataji.
Down to God, the destroyer of the round of births and rebirths, the giver of liberation, peace. The Lord who is the supreme, immutable, and all-pervasive, beyond the manifest and the unmanifest, free from manifoldness, one, ever blissful, ever gracious, ever pure, attributeless, stainless, limitless like the sky. When the wise meditate upon him, they see him in samadhi. In him who is absolute truth, wisdom, and blessedness, we live, we move, and we breathe. In him, we have the center of our being, the center of our consciousness. When we contemplate on the Great Spirit as the self residing in all beings, we realize our unity with all things and creatures in this universe. Everyone is my own. No one is a stranger or enemy. The universe is our dwelling place. The whole creation is our immediate family. It's my own self which is residing in every being, is what Vedanta says. It's my heart that pulsates within every form. It is my understanding that guides and controls every life. When you contemplate on this oneness of yours with the entire creation, there is no place for fear in you, and no one fears you. You fear no one. Inside and outside, you find only your peace and only peace. Repeat in your heart silently, I love every being. I am one with all. My soul dwells in each body, in the soul of all souls. I am one with every being in this universe. Now imagine that rays of love and peace are emerging out of your heart and spreading in all directions, above and below, in front of you. A beam of sweet, gentle, beautiful light of love and peace is emerging out of you, engulfing all the regions to your right. Think that the beam is coming out from your heart and spreading out to your right, becoming larger and larger and larger as it travels further and further from you, enveloping every being, animate or inanimate, into its fold. Now we imagine a beam of light is emerging to your left and traveling towards infinity, becoming larger and larger as it goes further and further, embracing everything within its fold. A beam is going out from you towards your front. A wonderful beam of soft light, a beam of gentle love and understanding peace is traveling from you, becoming larger and larger, traveling towards infinity. Similarly, a beam of light emerging out of you through your back is traveling into all the regions on that side, covering every point, bestowing peace and love. Whether they know it or not, we are sending it. One beam is going downward, covering all the regions till infinity. And a beam of light emerging out of the heart, traveling upwards, covering all the skies and everything till infinity. Now, our heart is the center, just a glow of glory in the heart. From there has emerged this infinite universe of light, love, and peace, touching every human being, every creature, stone and tree, water, air, fire, everything, including everything in its embrace. And we remain in the center of this glorious globe of love and peace. Poised beautifully in space. Let us hold ourselves like this for some time. We have lost our petty individuality. We have become one with the infinite glory, love, peace, purity. Feel it. Feel it inside, feel it all around. And think that the powerful rays that have gone from you have touched with its invisible hands every point in this creation. Now slowly, let us withdraw that power from all sides into our own heart. Imagine that infinite globe of power and purity, light and love, slowly coming back into our heart and becoming that point of God's presence in our heart. Peace, peace, peace. The rishis of Samaveda